Okay, so imagine for a second that your high school wasn't a place you went to learn, but was basically a high-security prison. We're about to dive into this wild story about a school that had its own bizarre set of rules, a full-blown black market for pens, and a cast of characters that you just won't believe. I mean, the source material just sets the scene perfectly with this quote. This wasn't just about getting an education, it was about serving a sentence. It was a place where parents sent their kids hoping, and I'm quoting here, that they'd become successful day laborers. That tells you pretty much everything you need to know about the kind of place this was. And your sentence didn't just start when you walked through the school gates. Oh no. The whole experience began with the daily commute, which was this absolutely insane combination of torture and, believe it or not, strategy. So first you had to deal with the van driver, who everyone called Payaji, which just kind of means brother. Now this guy's daily routine was a masterclass in how not to do things. Can you imagine getting picked up at 5 in the morning for a school that starts at 9? He'd spend the next 4 hours just winding through the city, and his van was notorious for getting flat tires. Our narrator absolutely could not stand him, but there was a secret reason he put up with it all. Which, brings us to the big question, right? Why would any sane teenager put themselves through a 4-hour ordeal like that every single morning?
Well, the answer, as it so often is, was a girl. Her name was Chameli, and she just so happened to ride the same van.
And this wasn't just some schoolboy crush. It led to this incredibly detailed multi-step master plan. Okay, so step 1, you had to be the first one on the van. Step 2, immediately claim the seat next to you with your bag. Step 3, pretend to be dead asleep. The final move was to wake up just as she was getting on the now-packed van and make it look like your spot was the only one left. It was all about the subtle acting, you see.
As if that wasn't enough, the commute also featured this terrifying street rivalry. So Bayaji and this auto rickshaw driver were buddies off the road, but once they got behind the wheel, they were mortal enemies. They would have these insane races, with their vehicles literally overflowing with kids. The auto driver would apparently lose kids in the middle of a race and not even realize it, leaving poor Bayaji to stop and pick them up. Just wow.
So, if you somehow managed to survive the death race to school, your next challenge was to face the actual wardens who ran this place. And right at the top of this whole crazy pyramid was the school's in charge, a woman known to every single student simply as Dawn.
Now, Dawn was not your typical school administrator. She was this feared figure with all these bizarre, almost terrifying habits. She was short with a big belly, and the students swore she was getting shorter every year. She actually had to stand up while driving her car just to see the road. And get this, the rumor was she'd watch students from the roof with a sniper rifle, just waiting to punish someone for breaking a rule that nobody even knew existed.
Of course, every Dawn needs an enforcer, right? And in this prison, that job belonged to the PE teacher, a guy named Bhushan.
This guy was less of a teacher and more like the prison's head of security. He literally had his own name tattooed across his thighs, BHU on one, Sean on the other. He had this uncanny ability to be the first person on the scene whenever any trouble started, and he was obsessed with searching students' bags. There were even these dark rumors flying around that he was part of a child smuggling ring with the van drivers. So with these characters running the show, it's maybe not so surprising that inside the school, a whole complex economy had popped up, and it all revolved around one very specific everyday item.
The absolute pillar of this entire economy was a game called pen fighting. This was a super high-stakes game where kids would flick their pens at each other on a desk, trying to knock the other one off. And the winner didn't just get bragging rights, they got to keep the loser's pen. So winning and losing had very real consequences.
And in this world, your social status was literally defined by the pen you carried. If you had a Trimax, you were a rich kid, no question. That was the dream pen. The Zippy Gel was for the common folk, famous for its ink that would bleed through like 10 pages. And then you had the Use and Throw, which was for the poor kids. It was cheap, but hey, it got the job done.
This just shows how pens became so much more than just tools for writing. They were the foundation for gambling, for debt. Kids would bet pens they didn't even own. This led to the champions hoarding all the good pens, which fueled a thriving black market and, yeah, even outright theft. When a Trimax pen went missing, the entire school would basically go on lockdown. Now, you'd think the teachers would try to get this all under control, but nope. In some cases, they were the main attraction. In this asylum, the inmates were absolutely running the show. Let's take the English teacher, for example. The students nicknamed him Chota Bheem, which is after this really popular and super strong cartoon character. And that nickname was deeply, deeply ironic, as you're about to see. So,
This teacher was a very short, very irritable man, whose main hobby, it seemed, was beating up the male students. He was so short that he literally had to jump up to even try and hit them in the face. His teaching style? He'd translate an English sentence into another, slightly different English sentence. He also had this incredibly creepy habit of sniffing the girl's perfume, and, according to school legend, he would get a bonus for every student he injured.
And all this anarchy really hit its peak in the one place where there was absolutely no adult supervision: the school washroom.
This place wasn't a restroom, it was an active crime scene. The light bulbs were always stolen, so it was pitch black. Faucets were just ripped straight from the walls. The soap was always missing. And maybe the weirdest thing of all, students would apparently eat the fetal balls, those little mothball things for the toilets, because they thought they were mouth fresheners.
What this all adds up to is just an environment of complete and total chaos. It was a place where students would just walk right past the principal without a second glance, chests puffed out like they owned the school.
And this quote from the source just sums up the whole backward logic of the place perfectly. The students who had the most swagger, the ones acting like they ran everything, were often the very same ones whose parents hadn't even paid the school fees.
Hearing a story like this really makes you stop and think about your own school days, doesn't it? It leaves you wondering, what was the strangest rule, or the weirdest teacher, or the most bizarre tradition from your school? I mean, it probably wasn't this level of chaos, but I'm willing to bet every school has its stories.